Hello there. Lovely to see you. Thanks so much for joining me today. I've got some good news. All these issues that I've been having with my channel, if you haven't seen the posts coming in or didn't notice that something had happened, long story short, basically my channel got taken down for a few days due to hacking. So someone managed to get access to my Google account, which then basically gave them access to my YouTube account, which they seem to have wanted to do for some sort of nefarious reasons. They ran a live stream for an hour or two until YouTube got wind of it and removed it, but thus removing my channel in the process. So if you saw something pop up saying this channel has been removed due to community guideline issues, this is basically what it was. So I posted about a week ago to let you know what was happening, just trying to explain things a little bit. It's obviously been really stressful. So even when I got the channel restored, I've been talking to Google support, YouTube partnership support. It's been a long-winded process, but even when I got the channel back online quite a few days ago now, I still didn't have the channel monetized, so adverts will still play, but there's no revenue on the channel, and the sort of performance of the channel is affected as well, unfortunately. So although my Google account, the YouTube account, has been secured, the hacker has had their access removed. Unfortunately, it does have a knock-on effect on the channel as it's been removed from the algorithm for a few days through the YouTube and Google algorithm. So hopefully the channel will recover. I'll have to just wait and see. But the good news is that in the early hours of this morning, the monetization has been restored, so channel memberships are active now. Some of you will have seen that your channel membership was paused, but that's all fixed at least. So fingers crossed the channel recovers, the impressions increase, people still get to see this channel and all its videos, that it doesn't get sort of lost in the mass of everything else out there. So that's really good news. But it has been really difficult. For those of you that noticed and went looking for me on an old sort of inactive YouTube channel, or have been getting in touch through email and Discord and Patreon and things like that, and leaving comments on the posts that I've made, honestly, I cannot begin to tell you how much that has helped me. It's just priceless. So thank you so much for those kind words and encouragement, sharing stories of how much you've enjoyed my audiobooks over the weeks or months or years that you've been following me. It's really just helped to keep my spirits up during this really difficult 2 weeks or so. For those of you that have been following me a long time, you'll know that I've had issues with YouTube monetization and copyright and all sorts of things a long time ago. So that sort of made this even more tricky, because it's just sort of like, oh, come on, not another issue, you know, when I've put so much of myself into this YouTube channel over the years. It's just really disheartening to suddenly have a big issue, a security issue, and something that was obviously like completely out of my hands as well. Yeah, it's been really difficult, but honestly, thank you so much for all the support. Thank you for checking in on this video today. It's just wonderful, and it's just lovely to be back at the microphone and making things for you again. So yeah, let's just get back on the horse, so to speak, and get making nice things again. And today I would just love to share some old books with you. And I'll read some from one of them as well. So let me move little baby Foxy out of the way. And although this is not an old book or series of books in terms of when they were actually produced, they were obviously originally published a very long time ago, and it will lead me into some older copies that I have as well. So for those of you that have been following my Beatrix Potter series that I've been doing for quite a few weeks now, this is the box set that I've been reading from. These are the next two that I've got lined up for you. The Tale of Tom Kitten, The Tale of Mr. Jeremy Fisher, and you can just see, for those of you that have never seen Beatrix Potter's illustrations before, these are sort of remastered versions of them. They're just absolutely amazing, and they run throughout the entire book. Add so much to what is beautiful writing, but they add so much really characterful, joyful, beautiful, detailed, zoological almost. Just gorgeous. So yeah, here it is, the Peter Rabbit Library. One of very many versions and compilations of Beatrix Potter's works. You can get smaller ones with just a few. You can get ones with the sort of entire library, complete works, all these sorts of things. But this is 10 selected ones that I've been working through. So all these are already on my channel. Generally in pairs of 2, and a couple where I've been reading on camera a separate Tailor of Gloucester and The Tale of Squirrel Nutkin. So you can look out for all of these on my channel already. But yeah, just wanted to give you a little glimpse of this series because they are just beautiful, just absolutely stunning. So this is this, and my parents, bless them, they found these 3 much older Beatrix Potter books. So once I finished the Peter Rabbit Library, I can move on to these 3 and this little beautiful one as well. So not quite as old as these 3, but clearly a little bit older than this version that I've been using so far. So we've 4 more stories that we can work through. The Tale of Mrs. Tittlemouse here. Just so lovely. So this one is from 1993. So nice. And then these older ones here, you can see obviously they've got a little bit of wear and tear to them, but for me that just all adds to the charm. I've never been one of these people that keeps things in their original packaging or locks them away in a glass cabinet and things like that. I love to love things. Just use them, enjoy them, share them. So that this is sort of worn and marked and things, like I said, it just all adds to the charm and the life of the book for me. Triggers my imagination as well, just to imagine what sort of life this little book has had, and that these stories are just continuing to be loved 100 years after they were originally written is just wonderful. So you'll see here we've got black and white pictures. So tiny, this little book as well, it's so delicate. And then we've still got some colour copies of her watercolours as well. Beautiful. And these three, unfortunately, are not marked in terms of their publication date. Like this, this particular edition, I don't have a date for it. I could try and figure it out using the ISBN here, probably. If I have a look online, I can probably work out when this was published. Maybe you've got copies similar to this at home. I'd love to know. You might know just from glancing at it, like, oh, this is a 1980s copy, for example. Butter and milk from the farm. The little frontispiece. So I'll just flick through this one a little bit for you as well. The invitation. The pie made of mouse. The veal and ham pie. Where is the pie made of mouse? Duchess in the porch. So, I could spend ages literally just flicking through these books. Never mind reading them. Where is the patty pan? So, this one and The Tale of Samuel Whiskers. I mean, these two look to me like they're from different editions themselves. And this one also looks a little different, doesn't it? Obviously, we've got the square front here, the circular front. I don't know if they'd have been like that if they were in the same set. And again, with like the stamp, the publisher's stamp here looks the same, but the shape of the illustrations is different. Here, it doesn't have that stamp. But I think it is still an F1. Yeah, it has to be with this same inside cover, you know, and here we go, yeah. But it does look very similar inside to the other two. It doesn't have the name of the illustrations, though, or the paintings. Mr. Todd. He was mystified. He sat quite still and listened attentively. Then he peeped in at the window. The water was dripping from the bed. The pail had rolled into a corner. Absolute chaos, yeah. So, really looking forward to reading these for you, along with The Tale of Mrs. Tittlemouse. But first things first, it will be these two to finish out those original 10. If you've any favourites among these 4, please do let me know. It might influence which I do first. If you have a preference in terms of how I present the reading, I would love to know as well. In terms of the reading style, more of a slow, sleepy bedtime story, more animated. And also in terms of, presentation. So on video like this, where you can actually see the book, or the video facing me, where you can actually see me reading and sort of performing and getting into it in that sense, or whether you don't even feel like it it needs the video at all, and you're happy, like with the sort of soundscape style that I was doing, or literally just a static picture and just listening to the audio book as it would be more there rather than a sort of live performance. If you've any preference at all, not only for the Beatrix Potter but for other things too, I would love to know what you particularly enjoy. So these are these. We will move them out of the way. And just on a little side note, my parents also found this at a second-hand shop. They just thought it was cute. A little Benjamin Bunny. He's the red jacket. Peter Rabbit, of course, with his little blue jacket that he immediately loses in his original story. But still absolutely iconic for Peter Rabbit. So yeah, very cute. Some of you will recognize this one. I read about 20 poems from the Illustrated Treasury of Poetry for Children some months ago. So I read, 20 something, I forget the number, around 20, from the seasons, this first section here. And this book, wait, let me just have a look at the date on it now. I've forgotten. 1978. This copy, 1978. This one I found in an absolutely gorgeous second-hand bookshop in Robin Hood's Bay, which is a beautiful little fishing village, seaside village, just down the road from Whitby. Whitby, famously used by Bram Stoker in Dracula, where Dracula first reaches England during the massive storm, seemingly in the form of a big black dog. Wonderful scenes, fantastic, iconic scenes from Dracula there, with Mina and Lucy. And wow, just amazing. So Bram Stoker based those incredible scenes from Dracula in Whitby, and this little book is from just down the road. Lucy and Mina actually walk from Whitby along the coast, down the coast, to Robin Hood's Bay, and back, a little jaunt. I think they get some luncheon somewhere. So me and my partner, in October of last year, we stayed for a couple of nights in Robin Hood's Bay. I was really, really under the weather, unfortunately, but I made the most of it, or we made the most of it. But I was really, really struggling. But yeah, we had a couple of days in Whitby and sort of a day in Robin Hood's Bay, and just bumped into this gorgeous bookshop where this was found, and I just had to get it. It was quite pricey, as I remember, in terms of a second-hand book. I think it was about £12, £13, something like that. But however much it was exactly, I thought it was worth it. I couldn't resist. I don't buy many things for myself at all. I'm not a particularly materialistic person, and I just try to get by with the things I've got. So I really find it difficult to sort of justify spending something on myself. And although £12 or £13 might not sound a lot, like, to me it felt it. I was really sort of like, okay, am I being silly getting this? But I just thought, no, I have to. Like, whether I even, oops, I'm so sorry, wobbling the camera there. Whether I even use it on the channel or not, I have to have this. It's just gorgeous. And obviously I did read some of the poems from it a few months ago, which helped me to get back into things after quite a bit of a break as well. So do take a look at that video if you'd like to hear me read these poems, you can see where I've hearted some of them here. These are the ones that I chose to read for you. And I did say in that video, if you'd like to hear more from it, let me know. And a few of you did say so. I still haven't got back to it yet. I've just been working on other things and enjoying other things. But you can see all the different headings here. It really covers an amazing spectrum of poetry. A lot of big names throughout. I hope you can make that out. But yeah, gorgeous illustrations throughout as well. Look at this, Jabberwocky Lewis Carroll. Again, just characterful, joyful, really lovely. Certainly something you could share with children of all ages, and absolutely something many, many adults would enjoy too. Really quite educational. Just lovely. So I wanted to share this one just in case you hadn't seen it in that video a few months ago. And moving on to another book that my parents so kindly found and got for me very recently, actually, just a week or two ago. A copy of Little Lord Fauntleroy by Frances Hodgson Burnett. So, as many of you know, a lot of you even found me through it. I've got an audiobook of The Secret Garden on my channel. One of my oldest videos. And as I no longer have The Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and whatnot on my channel, The Secret Garden is now like my most successful video with over 2 million views. I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that would like to see me or like to hear me read Little Lord Fauntleroy. I've also done A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. They're arguably her most famous works, but this is up there as well. I know many people really do like it a lot. I've looked at reviews on, because this is not a book I've read. I've skimmed some of it a long time ago. Like I read the first chapter probably about 3 years ago or something like that. Not something I shared, but just for myself, just to see if it was something I wanted to delve into at that time. And I've since reread the first chapter and second chapter and been skimming through it. And yeah, read a lot of reviews on Goodreads and elsewhere. And I'd say it doesn't seem to be as popular as A Little Princess and The Secret Garden, but still many fans of this story out there. And regardless of whether I do decide to read this for the channel, I just have to show you this book. It is absolutely beautiful. I don't know what year this was published. I could try and figure it out. But it has no markings whatsoever inside. It just goes into list of illustrations, chapter 1, and nothing that can really help date things at the back either. It's a mystery. With no dust cover. Clearly it's been left out in the sun for a considerable period of time, very heavily faded, got a little bit of damage here. If you've any idea of how old you think this is, I would definitely guess like a good 80 years old, something along those lines. Maybe even 100. So yeah, you can help me to figure it out. I could obviously have a little search around online and see if I can find similar copies and date it like that, but I just really wanted to share it with you. Look at these illustrations. Wow. I hope you are very well, he continued, with the utmost friendliness. I'm very glad to see you. And this is another Frederick Warne and Co., just like the Beatrix Potters. And it says here, interestingly, Frances Hodgson Burnett, author of A Little Princess, not The Secret Garden, which has arguably become her more popular work. So yeah, list of illustrations here. Can I have it now? He cried. Can I give it to her this minute? Those of you that know the story begins in America. It doesn't mention in the story itself exactly when it would be set, but it would be at the very end of the 1800s, very end of the 19th century, turning into the 20th century. Begins in America. So there's Cedric, the little boy, little Lord Fauntleroy. His father is English and has moved to America, and it describes that he's basically wanting to take an American lady as his wife, which gets him into a lot of bother with his father. Basically, it's mentioned within just these first couple of pages, he's sort of disowning him, but some gentleman, probably connected with the father, with the grandfather of Cedric, comes looking for Cedric, and he's asking him to return to England to potentially take up his station as lord of their estate. So, in terms of accents and things like that, the mum is certainly American. Cedric has been raised as an American boy, but obviously American accents were considerably different over 100 years ago as well. So it would be a tricky one to read if I was actually trying to lean into sort of authentic accents and whatnot. This gentleman is a very posh Englishman. It's an interesting one. Lord Fauntleroy, my lord. I don't want to sort of give too much away about the story, but I just really want to show the illustrations. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if there are spoilers here. But just look at them. Just look at them. Just getting another colour illustration. I've got the list. 2463. Okay, it includes the black and white ones in the list there as well. Let me just find one more colour picture. Is it gonna give the story away though? I actually can't find another colour. Is it just those ones? Well, there are black and white ones throughout. I thought there was another colour one. Oh well. But the point stands. A gorgeous copy. Is it one that you would like to see me read on video or just listen to? Is it one that you're interested in me reading? Let me know in the comments. Been using this gorgeous little picture as a bookmark. So the last book I would like to show you today is this one. And I will read a little bit from this today too. So this one I found in Oxford. Again, me and my partner were there. Just it was a day trip on the back end of a work trip that she'd had. So we spent a few hours in Oxford, and I mean, Oxford is what an amazing town. Goodness me, I've not visited since I was about 17, 18, when I was looking at prospective universities. So to go back as an adult, even though just it was for a few hours, was just magnificent, because I honestly didn't remember so much about it when I was from when I was 17. I think I was just very focused on other things, so I wasn't really taking in the town as a whole. Obviously Oxford, like Cambridge and many other old English towns, exceptionally famous. But it was just such a lovely experience, and it just felt like wherever you went, it was a picture, it was a postcard. Just so many beautiful shops and cafes, incredible architecture, churches, university buildings, you name it. And secondhand bookshops were just a wealth that I have never ever experienced before. It was just incredible, absolute treasure troves. So I've spent some time in St Andrews, lovely old towns and cities in Europe, and all over the place. But I've never seen such a wealth of incredible books and literature as I have in secondhand bookshops and charity shops in Oxford. So this actually came from an Oxfam bookshop there, which was like a museum. They literally had books behind glass that were 200 years old plus. Incredible. And then in some of the independent bookshops, particularly ones affiliated with Oxford University, I mean, they had books worth hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. It was just incredible. I've never seen anything like it. Like, if I'd have had money to spend, goodness me, I would have gone absolutely wild. So we came away with a couple of books, an old history book. She picked up something else, I think, a book on Chernobyl. But for me, I saw this and I fell in love with it. This was only just a few pounds as well. I mean, I really wanted a little memento, a bit of memorabilia to take away from Oxford. Something old, something interesting, something a little bit different. And this was what I settled on, within budget. So this is a first edition, first published in 1907. So this copy is from 1907. The little Lord Fauntleroy, if you compare, is similar, certainly, in typeface and presentation. So I'm thinking this is a similar age. For some reason, I feel like it's maybe slightly younger. This Pictures from Nature's Garden has clearly had a very tough life, but again, that was for me part of the charm. I really didn't mind that it was so heavily worn. It just fascinates me. Here's the receipt. So yeah, £6.99. As they'd marked in the cover here, I was not going to try and barter. I was just so happy. And we had a lovely, lovely conversation with lady that worked there, and also a gentleman that was shopping there. Just a wonderful atmosphere, such a pleasant time. I was very happy to spend a few pounds just to sort of say thank you for this experience. Do you know what I mean? It was just gorgeous. I love this little piece of paper here, just in the front to protect the opening pages. It's just something wonderful. And I loved the topic. I'm a big fan of all things nature and natural. I have been since I was a little boy. So the subject here: pictures from nature's garden, stories from life in wood and field, by H.W. Shepherd Walwyn. It just really captured me. Again, lovely illustrations. There's photographs and illustrations from photographs, I believe. So we've got some information on the publisher here. John Long, London. I've been looking quite a bit online about this book and about the author, and honestly, I've not been able to find much information on this author. So I'm now aware of other books that he wrote, but I can't even find out exactly where he was born. I found some information on his mother and father through genie.com, and they've got some information on his brother and sister and some other relatives that were born, and sorry, his children as well, that were born in Surrey, I believe, and he'd got family from a couple of other places in England. But I just really wanted to learn more about him, but I've struggled. But you can see that clearly back at the turn of the century, he was quite a well-known author. It's kind of fascinating how someone can just sort of fall back into the shadows of history. Because if you read the sort of critique at the back here, like the little snippets and reviews, you've got one here, for example, Daily Express. This is one of his other books, Nature's Riddles, or The Battle of the Beasts. In Nature's Riddles, Mr. H.W. Shepherd Walwyn, the well-known zoologist, deals in a charming manner with the wonderful, I'm not sure how you actually pronounce that, equipoise of nature. So well-known zoologist, that's what I was trying to work off when I was looking on Google and whatnot. And apparently he wasn't a zoologist in a professional sense, but very much an amateur, and did gather a lot of very interesting research on all sorts of birds and beasts. And he peppers his sort of scientific works with all sorts of anecdotes and stories, and he talks a little bit about this in the introduction, which I was going to read to you. I'm gathering that he was a professor at Eton, because he's got all sorts of stories about children, and then the children's experiences with animals and like I said, birds and beasts and whatnot. And then I'm guessing he then wrote and published various sorts of scientific books and papers, and zoology was one of his passions. It's just really, really interesting. So if you do happen to know anything more about H.W. Shepherd Walwyn, let me know. I'm really tempted actually to buy a couple of his other works from a couple of people online, that are selling copies for like 15-20 quid. Again, sort of first editions from this time. I think it was was it Nature's Nursery that I was considering? I've got it open on my computer, so yeah, they just sound lovely. Like, yeah. So anyway, I'd like to just read the author's note. You get a little bit of a sense of his personality, and there's just a couple of really lovely little things that he says in here that touched me quite a bit when I stood in Oxfam for a good just 20 minutes perusing this book, and we must have been in there over an hour altogether looking at other things, and like I said, talking with people and whatnot. So I was just going to read the author's note and then the first chapter, The Mad Organist, and I'll leave it there for today. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Obviously it's a little bit different to what I normally do, a little bit of a ramble, a little show and tell. If you've enjoyed this, please do let me know if you'd like me to do other videos like this, if you'd like me to read more from this book, and if you would like to support my channel and what I do, obviously subscribing is fantastic if you haven't already. Helps you to keep in the loop with what I'm sharing. You can click that notification bell to make sure you're aware when I share new videos. Liking the video is great. Leaving a comment is always wonderful. I really love to hear from you. And supporting me through channel membership or through Patreon is absolutely magnificent as well. So appreciated. So, the author's note here to my readers. In the following collection of stories, the majority of which have already appeared in the animal world, and one or two in certain American papers, it is my desire to point out that the subjects have without exception been drawn upon the canvas of reality. Fact, as set forth by actual incidents within my own experience, being the current that percolates each theme, where fiction has, however, been sparingly employed to close the occasional gap. Thus, linking together in a chain of logical sequence incidents perhaps otherwise disconnected, and thereby ensuring the proper completeness of the picture as a whole. For even as the colour picture requires the frame to set off its general effect, to convey a proper impression to the eye of the beholder, and consequently a fuller conception to his brain, so in these tales has my pencil, fancy-free, woven about each fact basis a fabric which, while primarily intended to clothe the bald spot and soften the unsightly edge, is at the same time nowhere so opaque but that the groundwork of fact is clearly visible beneath. In the majority of cases, the facts do actually bulge almost to the extinction of their setting, as in The Mad Organist, or in the account of my adventure with the murderous gypsy. In some 2 or 3 alone does the setting incline to become the more conspicuous. As examples of the latter, I may cite the stories entitled Robin and The Spirit of the Waters. Friendly critics of those articles which have already appeared in print have at times expressed incredulity at one or another of the more remarkable of the child utterances recorded therein. Let me therefore state that not one such saying have I included that has not actually been spoken in my presence. In all except the above specified purely unessential details, it has, of course, been my uttermost endeavour in these pages to hold the mirror up to nature. And if at times the hand that holds it may have faltered, the pencil proved inadequate in portrayal of character, the brush in its essay to paint a picture to which nature alone can give true tone and faithful colouring, of your clemency extend the hand of pardon, bearing in mind that the essence of nature's charm lies in the fact that no power upon earth can reproduce the smallest of her works. Pictures from Nature's Garden. Chapter 1. The Mad Organist. He was known as the Mad Organist. I found him standing by the river. He turned round as I drew near, took off his coat, and spread it very carefully upon the bank. "Very rheumatic," said he, shortly, by way of accounting for the action. "So you were trying to keep it warm?" I suggested, idiotically. "I meant, I am," he replied. Then, seating himself very deliberately, in his shirt-sleeves, upon the neatly folded garment, he began, without any warning, to sing, in a strident tone, a selection from some oratorio, his voice cracking audibly on the high notes. The singer was evidently resuming at exactly the same point where he had broken off when I appeared upon the scene, despite the fact that the point was somewhere in the middle of a bar. It had been, indeed, no other than the sound of a lusty voice floating across the field that had led me to take a bee-line in the direction whence the singing proceeded, subsequently entering the garden by a gap in the hedge, in lieu of the more conventional method of approach by means of the front gate. "Where do I come in?" I inquired after a moment, in some amusement, for there were no seats in sight, and certainly no room to spare upon the coat. "Can't imagine," was the curt reply. "Not by the front gate, or the bulldog would have torn you limb from limb. By the way, will you post these for me when you get back to town?" Producing a couple of postcards from a pocket of the coat he was sitting on, the speaker handed them to me in fingers richly coated with the heavy clay of the country. I took the cards from him and seated myself upon a willow stump a few paces off. The grounds in which we sat were the actual property of the mad organist, for all that they included a portion of the river, inasmuch as the eccentric owner, when negotiating for a plot of land upon which to build his strange hermitage, had made a stipulation that it should be such as would enable his garden to slope down to the very water's edge. The house he had designed himself, and the result was a bungalow-like erection of the weirdest description, of which one entire side was composed of huge windows, for the architect entertained unique notions on the subject of fresh air. But for these windows, moreover, it would have been difficult to recognize the form of a human habitation, so smothered was the remainder of the house beneath a tangled mass of climbing plants. The crimson sprays of rambling roses innumerable struggling for the preeminence with the purple racemes of the wisteria, while the porcelain tubes of the jasmine mingled their rich fragrance with that of the creamy-fingered honeysuckle. I had been told by a friend that the hermit had also in his lonely retreat a wonderful organ with which he could raise heaven or hell, whichever you like. My informant had also ventured the somewhat vague assertion that the man was an extraordinary naturalist, and my curiosity had been aroused to the point of coming to prove for myself the truth of his statements. Having been further warned that the mad organist required very careful handling, and that to press him unduly, or oneself to take the initiative, would entail inevitable failure, I sat still and waited until he should arouse himself from his reverie. It was indeed a creature of strange appearance upon which my eyes rested. Almost bald upon the summit, his enormous head was adorned around the edges by a light-coloured, moss-like growth, which apparently did duty for hair, and appeared to be of totally different shades at different points. His face was clean-shaven, or rather mown, for he eschewed razors. He had been heard to say that shaving necessitated a sinful waste of time, trouble, and good useful blood, and I was quite willing to believe that in his case it might. He had started a beard once, by way of a solution of the difficulty, but finding that it got in the way when he drank, he gave it up, and thenceforth kept down the sprouts with scissors. The hermit possessed, moreover, a wonderful smile, which was just now beginning to light up his features, and I followed the direction of his gaze to discover the cause. A dragonfly was hovering hard by, floating from clump to clump of the broad rushes which grew in profusion around, striking its lace-like wings with a metallic rustle as it swooped or wheeled suddenly in pursuit of its prey. The mad organist held out his grimy hand in the direction of the insect, and the latter, to my intense astonishment, immediately alighted upon the outstretched finger and perched there, while its long pointed body, adorned with brilliant tartan-like patterns of emerald and black, curled and uncurled with that curious action which has given rise to the rustic superstition that the dragonfly can sting, and has earned for it the sobriquet of horse stinger. "How did you tame it?" I inquired, after a moment of mute surprise. "Quite simple," he rejoined. "Hold out your hand." Approaching, I did as he told me, and with a deft movement he transferred the dragonfly to my finger. But scarcely had the insect's clawed feet touched my flesh when a convulsive shiver seemed to pass through its frame, and leaping into the air, it made off at once in obvious alarm. Evidently the creature could discriminate between us. Perhaps because my finger was rather cleaner than the one to which it was accustomed. "How do you do it?" I asked again, making no attempt to disguise my astonishment. For answer my companion laughed. A low, musical laugh, at the sound of which a small brown head with sparkling eyes peered from behind a tuft of grass, and seeing me, vanished in some confusion. "He's an old bird, that," said the mad organist. I looked at him in surprise, for I certainly had thought it was a water rat. "The dragonfly, I mean," he added. "He's been here all the summer." My companion rose from the bank as he spoke, and picked up his coat. "Ah, they all know me," he muttered, more to himself than to me, and passing over to a clump of daisies, he stood for a moment watching a red admirable butterfly which was pirouetting among the blossoms. Although belonging to a species which is by nature easily frightened, the butterfly, curiously enough, paid no heed to the presence of the man bending over it. Stooping yet lower, he uttered a soft, crooning sound, and then started back suddenly and stood as though listening intently. "I'm coming," I thought I heard him murmur. Turning to me, "I'll play to you," he said abruptly. Twitching with excitement were the hermit's long, grubby fingers as he strode off rapidly towards the house, ere I had time to signify my delighted acceptance of his proposal, the very object for which I had come. "Great Scott!" I exclaimed, as the Red Admiral rose at once from the flowers and circled about the head of the figure retreating up the path. "Don't say that," said he, turning quickly, and looking so grieved that I wondered whether he could have misunderstood my mild exclamation. "Any form of expletive is a sign of weakness of character," he added gravely, and went on his way. With a sensation of having shrunk at least several inches in stature, I followed my guide, halting whenever he halted, which he did from time to time, standing for a few seconds as though wrapped in thought. At length he paused thus beside the half-open door of a low shed, within which was just visible some object of a brown, furry description. Whatever it was apparently asleep, since it was emitting an uncanny snorting sound. My friend had mentioned that the mad organist numbered a huge black sheep among his pets, or rather brown, for, with the exception of one notable flock, the so-called black sheep is purely mythical. So, I stooped to stroke the creature. "Better not touch him. He's rather cross today, and he's not chained. Has he horns, then? I asked, stepping quickly back. Horns? Dear, no. Do you ever see a bear that had? A bear? And I'd nearly stroked it. I felt distinctly more comfortable when the front door closed behind us. Moreover, I now understood the mysterious grin with which my friend had accompanied his information anent the black sheep. As we entered, my companion turned to me again. Mind the, Oh, you're all right, though, as you have your gaiters on. What on earth could he mean? My expression voiced the mystification that I felt. The alligator, he explained. But he is too young to hurt you through those, and he cannot reach over the tops of them. Placidly though he spoke, right thankful was I to the inspiration that had led me to don my leather gaiters upon a morning when necessity scarcely called for them. However, the precaution proved superfluous, for the creature in question thought fit to remain in the background. Once inside the door, the beholder's range of vision commanded a complete view of the whole of the interior of the house, inasmuch as there were no inner doors, partitions, or rooms. One vast hall providing all the accommodation required by the frugal tastes of the owner. At one end was a low couch upon which he slept, at the other the wonderful organ upon which he doted. He must have spent a small fortune upon that organ, the considerable savings of many years, but with the exception of this instrument, every article of furniture in the place had been constructed by the mad organist's own hands, as indeed was evidenced by their grotesque shapes and general appearance of instability. In the centre of the east wall of the house, opposite to the side which was composed entirely of windows, was hollowed out a kind of recess, in which stood a cauldron-like receptacle full of charred embers and surrounded by a varied assortment of patched-up pans and porridge bowls. A delicious aromatic odour pervaded the room, wafted in, doubtless, from the richly stocked garden without, since all the windows were thrown widely open at this season of the year. "How do you keep this great room warm in winter?" I asked, for a single fireplace seemed wholly inadequate for the purpose. "I have a fire," said he simply, looking at me as though I had been some Caribbee islander who had never heard of fires. "But surely that would not warm this great area?" "I don't want to warm the area," replied he. "Besides, there isn't one. I warm myself." "To do that?" He spoke with an expression of infinite pity, evidently now regarding me as a harmless lunatic. "To do that, I sit by the fire." I ventured no more questions, but sat down upon a section of tree trunk as the eccentric creature advanced towards the organ. An indescribable light appeared to irradiate his features, as he turned to the instrument with a caressing gesture and took his seat upon the stool. "You ought to get a wife to keep you company," said I, tentatively, looking round the room and wondering what any self-respecting lady would say to such a habitation. With a shocked, startled look, he turned his head. "Wife? Wife?" he repeated mechanically. "This is my beloved," he murmured, with a faraway look in his eyes, and his long fingers coiled around the stops with infinite love and hardly suppressed excitement. I scarcely knew when he began to play. For some moments he bent lovingly over the keyboard, ere I became aware of a faint, trembling murmur, which I at first took to be the buzzing of a bumblebee. The sound increased in volume until, in an instant, the frenzy came upon him, and I started from my seat as a sudden crash, as if of infernal thunder, made the long row of huge windows to shake within their very sockets. A weird, unearthly expression had come into the eyes of the musician, and he stared straight up at the organ pipes, as though unconscious of aught save the inspiration that possessed him. As his theme expanded, the effect was as though one could read his thoughts, and I could but sit spellbound under the interpretation of his feelings. Or ever I was aware, I found myself borne along whither I knew not, blindly following through every phase of the harmonious utterance, as though my very being were but a creation of the music, passing, as if in a dream, from crashing chord to tinkling cymbal, now reading with silent ecstasy the trembling love message of the Vox Humana, now shuddering beneath the deep denunciation of the voluminous diapason, while from time to time unknown yet seemingly familiar airs would rise in solitary majesty above the flow of rippling cadences, and, blending again, would melt into an oblivion of richest harmony that ever sprang from shivering keys. There was no method when once the madness was upon him, but just as the spirit moved him, unimpelled yet unrestrained, onward he carried me whither he listed. At one moment, I could even picture myself on the grassy slope of some mighty mountain, where I could breathe entranced the music of the distant cowbells, dreaming softly to the sound of babbling brooks and faraway murmurs of the crackling echoes, and to be overwhelmed the next instant by a sudden volcanic roar, whirled away as on the wings of an avalanche and plunged into the vortex of deep waters. Here I could feel the churning eddies boiling and foaming, while the lightning's zigzag fork leaped in a minor key from crag to crag, flashing with lurid glow through crack and crevice and bottomless chasm, or playing athwart the frothing pools amid a sudden, deathly silence. Fit herald of the low, threatening growl, which merged anon into a long, heavy roll of suppressed rage, as the thunder opened wide its belching utterance, striking discordant echoes from every quivering peak. No less true to life than the short, breathless calm that then ensued was the shriek of unparalleled fury with which, an instant later, from the pent-up heavens there seemed to burst a deluge of driving hail, and bury itself, like a volley of demons, with hissing splutter in the roaring abyss beneath. Borne thence by the volume of turbid waters, tumbling and crashing, and boiling and dashing in a whirlwind of seething foam, tearing through meadow and mountain pass, by castle and cottage home, I found myself carried at length by an irresistible force far out upon the broad bosom of the lake, where I had scarce begun to rock peacefully upon the glancing waves, when I was rudely awakened by the musician leaping from off the stool. "I won't detain you any longer," said he. The rapturous love light had faded from his eyes, and he stood in the middle of the room, twitching his fingers nervously. Reluctantly, I rose from my seat, and verily I should not have been greatly surprised that I found my clothes to be wet through. I had been in more than one storm upon a Swiss mountain, and by no means the least real was the one in which I had spent the last 20 minutes. The mad organist accompanied me to the little wicket gate, also constructed by himself, which gave upon the road from a far corner of his domain. Stooping beneath some overhanging branches, I was attracted by a low, croaking sound, which apparently proceeded from somewhere above my head. Stopping short, I peered among the leaves. while an amused smile floated across the face of my companion. Stretching out his hand, he grasped a twig of Lauristinus and pulled it towards him. "Ah, my beauty," said he, in a tone of infinite tenderness, apparently addressing the leaves. "You cannot deceive me. And you don't want to," he added, as one of the leaves stepped from the branch onto his outstretched finger. It was a tiny green tree frog, and the accompanying illustration will show that my failure to distinguish the creature among its natural surroundings was no great matter for surprise. I left my late entertainer still talking in low, soothing tones to the tiny green atom with the jeweled eyes, and turned my steps homewards. Electing to return by way of the riverbank, I cut across the field in order to regain it, skirting the hedge which separated the grounds of the hermitage from the outer world. Or ever I reached the corner, I halted abruptly, for the stillness of the waterside had begun to throb and palpitate with the sound of an unearthly music, which filtered through the rapidly deepening twilight. With startled scream there rose a wandering wildfowl, a stranger in these waters, and unused to the sound of the quivering vibrations from a reed which never yet grew by river-bank, while the accustomed water-rats peeped from out the broad rank rushes at the call of those lingering harmonies, and tremulously stirred the blushing faces of the ragged robin, as the whispered melody reached them through the rustling willows. Almost did I forget to post those cards. Discovering that the writer had omitted to stamp them, I affixed the necessary toll. As I did so, my eye caught sight of the words, in a very clear, though sprawling handwriting. "Are you ever coming to sweep that rotten chimney?" That was all. Wondering what sweep was employed by this strange character who did most things for himself, for the friends with whom I was staying had only that morning complained of the unpunctuality of the person who served them in this respect, I turned to the address on the reverse side. My eyes performed the process popularly described as starting from their sockets as I read, "The Manager, London and County Bank, Camford." Instinctively, I turned to the other card. "Mr. Merton, Chimney Sweep, Camford," was the address, and the communication to that gentleman was to demand, "Why in the name of thunder haven't you sent my passbook?" I could not help smiling as I remembered a certain remark in connection with expletives and weakness of character. I had not thought he could be inconsistent, but if he were, I knew this, that no living man would be more consistent in his inconsistency than the mad organist. For an instant I hesitated. Should I reverse the superscriptions upon those cards in accordance with the obvious intention of the writer? But I chanced to know the manager of that bank, and the contemplation of the effect upon that pompous person's demeanour on the receipt of a peremptory injunction to come and sweep that rotten chimney decided me. Besides, was it any business of mine? So, with an inward chortle, I dropped the missives into the letterbox. The last illustration shows a bat which I had noticed asleep in the mad organist's garden. Could it be, I asked myself subsequently, as I shook the negative to and fro in my developing tray, that this lover of darkness had also been attracted by the strange creature whom every bird, beast, reptile, and even insect seemed to venerate. Could it be that this slave of habit, for a bat will emerge from the crevice where he sleeps punctually at the same time every night, and return thither again almost on the tick of the clock, had chanced to pass within the radius of that magic influence, and unable or loath to resist it, had thus been constrained to break the habits of a lifetime so long as it could find a resting place within the shadow of that smile. Too fanciful a notion for this humdrum world of ours. That is as it may be. At all events, never before or since have I found a bat asleep in the open in that fashion. My host shrugged his shoulders when I asked him on my return for an explanation of the mysterious influence which the mad organist seemed to exercise over all living things. You should just see him with 6 wasps crawling over his hand at once, replied he. I believe he could make the very worms dance a hornpipe round his legs if he chose. But he had no explanation to offer as to how it was done, beyond the supposition that the hermit must be possessed of a highly magnetic temperament, and that, just as a serpent can mesmerize its victims, he cast about him, wherever he went, the spell of his mysterious presence, an influence so strong and subtle as to include even the very lowest of nature's atoms. I had once before come across a lady, charming, though eccentric, who possessed a remarkable power of attraction for the larger members of the animal kingdom, so that birds and beasts of all denominations would answer her call, hovering about her with perfect freedom and a complete absence of fear. But it seemed truly incomprehensible that any human being should be capable of extending such magnetic influence to the insect world, so that even such tiny organisms as butterflies should be insensibly drawn to him the moment they came within reach of his spell. However, I could but credit the witness of my eyes, a testimony before which mere theory must fall to the ground. Let others put upon it such construction as they please. And that's the end of the first chapter. Leading into chapter 2, Miriam and the Dormouse. Not very well today, thank you. The nest of the Dormouse. So Miriam has a poorly Dormouse. And the protagonist is helping to try and resuscitate him if it's possible. This is how I pass the winter. A little curled up Dormouse. It's so sweet. And yeah, this one. Frog spawn, figure 1. Tapioca pudding, figure 2. And there's a child here that's thinking that frog spawn is some tapioca pudding that's been dumped into a pond by someone who obviously didn't want it. And the author just goes on to say that unless some enterprising photographer should conceive the project of producing a cookery book on the true to nature lines, the odds are, at least even, that it will be the last. As he says, let me mention that I should imagine the above illustration to be probably the first photograph of tapioca pudding that has heretofore been given to the world. I just find it so sweet. Interesting, stimulating, joyful. Lovely. I feel like I'm travelling back in time. It's that nostalgia for a time you never knew. Cocoon of emperor moth. Prominent moth, showing resemblance to dead leaf below. The Garden of Eden. Puss moth at rest on a tree trunk. 3 cocoons of the puss moth on some bark of a willow tree. Puss cocoon on a piece of bark, showing hole through which the moth has emerged. Yeah, and this is how it goes on, just full of little anecdotes, little stories that intertwine descriptions and characteristics and experiences of nature. Just appreciating how wonderful, valuable and precious the natural world is. So, thank you so much for being here with me today. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, to read your thoughts in the comments. I always feel like I'm talking to you, you know, I read everything out aloud. So, you take care now, wherever you are and whatever you're up to. Read to you soon.